Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Lives Leaf Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Stop smiling, Aaron. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS Stop Smiling and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Yee! Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Leaf Talk, joining me is Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty well, Frank. How are you?
What's happening on the weekend?
You mean this particular weekend upcoming?
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing a kilt skate on the Saturday, and then I think I'm going to be taking in a PHF game up at Canland Sports at York University on the Sunday. So that should be a lot of fun.
Sorry, I needed to change my background.
No worries. I was wondering if we'd switch the shows or not.
Yeah, I was just making fun of you.
I mean, the good news is that the Maple Leafs actually finally have games again. So we're getting a game tonight in Columbus and then tomorrow as the second part of a back-to-back with travel back in Toronto.
And you know what? It has been a while.
Yeah. Far too long.
Do you think Marner has a couple of gray hairs now? It's been so long.
It's possible. I wonder if it's his dog that's giving it to him.
Is he still trying to grow a mustache?
I think
he walked away. I think he walked away from that try. he started in the summer, and you could see it in October, and it was gone in November.
It was a sad attempt at a mustache. Let me tell you.
Nothing speaks to youth more than the fact that well, it isn't just youth, I guess.
No, mine's pretty sad when it tries to come in too. So
my people are good at growing mustaches. Not as good as Greeks, but my people are pretty good. Was that a racist remark on my part?
I don't think so. Some people are just more hirsute than others.
Well, there is, there are, Italians are known as short people. So I'm talking about my people here, so, it should be okay. I would never say that Asian people, your people of your background, are short. I would never say that.
I mean, never. In general, we are, but it's not the end of the
world. It really doesn't matter. But, this is a whole nother topic. But let's go to the Leafs and let's talk about what's going on in their world. And first, I guess we'll start off with there's a defenseman who has really increased his value. In fact, he has proved to be very dependable. Even more, he's had a bit of an offensive flair as well, and I'm speaking about Connor Timmins.
Yeah, now the good news is he has 12 points. That's 1 goal and 11 assists in 18 games with the Maple Leafs this season.
That's good.
It's pretty awesome when you think
about
it.
That's good.
He did have a 10-game stint with the Tucson Roadrunners earlier this year, in which he was a -12. So, there's that part of it too. But he's a St. Catharines boy, and he has a chance to now play in Toronto. And he didn't seem to be working out at first because there were a lot of injury issues. But the good news is the Leafs have signed him to a 2-year contract extension at $2.2 million. That's $1.1 million per year. So that's handy. It's low. It gives us a defensive presence that we need, and it's not too much on the books.
And he brings something to the back line that the Leafs don't have much of on defense, and that's size.
Yep. Now, the other good thing to notice about this contract is that it's small enough that if things don't work out and things start to go sideways or he does get injured, they can bury his contract in the minors.
They can jettison his contract.
Yeah, they can put him down in the AHL, and that $1.1 million won't count against the cap. So,
yeah. So, but you know what? I think he's a keeper. I like the kid.
Yeah, in general, I've been very impressed with his play as well.
You know what's so likable about him, Aaron? You know what is so likable about him?
No, what is it?
The travels that he's been through. I don't think there's anything that. Come on, we both know in life, when you want something and it's taken away from you, when you get a chance to get it back, you work 10 times as hard to keep it. And his hockey career was not in his hands. His hockey career was out there somewhere. And he had a chance to revive his dream. And I think it creates a certain amount of appreciation, you know, and I think it's a character builder. And he is so committed to being consistent. I find him to be very consistent. And more importantly, he's a right-hand shot.
I would like to correct some facts that I threw out there earlier. It wasn't a 10-game stint with the Roadrunners at -12. It was a 6-game stint with the Roadrunners at -10, which is actually worse.
My
So,
math agrees with you. My math agrees with you. But that was when he just got back from injury.
yeah, and you know, in the past few years, he played 2 games with the Avalanche in 2019, 2020. In 2020, 2021, he played 31 games with them. You know, he hasn't had a lot of ice time in the NHL, but with the 18 games that he's played with the Leafs so far this year, he's made the most of it, and I'm glad to see it.
Apparently, Kyle Dubas is bringing in the trade deadline into focus. And apparently, he's told everybody what that focus looks like. So, Aaron, what does that focus look like?
Well, he had time during his media availability to confirm what his main focus was for the upcoming trade deadline. Um, I'm loath to use the word trade deadline, but that is what everybody calls it these days. So we'll stick with that for now. Now, the Leafs are going to be buyers. Dubas has shot down the idea
Like
that
they
he could
always
be
are.
looking for a goalie. Oh yeah, we're always buyers because
They're
we're always
they're always
optimistic.
under
You know?
Dubas, they're buyers. They've had to be.
Well, yeah, because they've been good to the point that, you know, there may be just one or two missing pieces for them to get over the top, at least for a one-time run. But they're not looking for a goaltending right away. He's happy with Murray and Samsonov so far this season. Not to the fact that Eric Shalgren has played well, and Joseph Wall has been absolutely fantastic for the Marlies, who's capable of stepping up. He is looking to add on defense and at forward at this point. At this point here, when we're healthy, the Leafs have 9 NHL blue liners for the most part. The top 6 are obviously Riley, Brody, Giordano, Hall, Sandin, and Liljegren. On top of that, you've also got Connor Timmins, Jordy Ben, and Victor Mete, who spent a lot of time on the ice with Ottawa. When it comes to forwards, there's really it's sort of a catch as catch can at that point. They'd be looking to add somebody on the left-hand side to go along with Bunting and the rest of them. Just because realistically speaking, while Bunting is a serviceable player, he's not necessarily top 6.
Okay, so in there somewhere in that word salad, was there a definition of what his focus is as far as what hocus pocus is he going to pull off?
Well, he at this point he is looking to add somebody, not necessarily at the deadline, but if they can make a run for the postseason, he's going to be looking to add a forward more than likely.
Just playing a little musical interlude. You know the group?
I couldn't quite hear it. I just heard a little bit of
Okay,
guitar.
let me see if I.
Not coming to me.
The name of the group is Focus, and it's called Hocus Pocus.
Ah, very nice.
See, there was a pun there, and you missed it, Aaron.
Totally.
I'm so hurt. I'm so hurt. I'm so devastated. I keep forgetting how old you are or aren't.
I'll go with aren't.
Okay, so allow me to let you speak unencumbered. So as far as that's concerned, he's what he's doing. He hasn't really said what he's going to do, but at the end of the day, Aaron, they can always improve their defense because every defense can be improved. They can always improve their scoring because all the scoring on a team can be improved. Now, there's one thing that they need to improve, and I still think it's out there, and it's a serious issue. They need a power forward, Aaron. I really think that if he trades for someone, it has to be a power forward.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget Kalle Järnkrok has been a beast in the playoffs in the past. Pierre Engvall is more flash in the pan than anything else. Zach Aston Reese is good for bouts of facey punchy, but other than that, there is no genuine.
I'm talking as a top 6 guy.
Yeah, no, and when you're looking at the players that could potentially be up there as for in the power forward slot, and I'm speaking here of the left wing side in particular, because the right wing side we've got
I agree
Sonat,
with you.
that's Martin
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. And I'm not necessarily talking about a punch in your face kind of guy, but I'm talking about a guy that will do it if necessary. And the message is there that there will be accountability. The Leafs are going to need somebody that makes the other team accountable during the playoffs, because they can't get the referees to be accountable. So they're going to have to do it a different way if they're going to make it past the first round. They have to make the other team accountable. And if as much as we jive or ride the officials in the National Hockey League when it comes to the Leafs, yes, homeritis does strike from time to time. But still, I really do believe that it's important that the Leafs do that. Anybody who doesn't think that the Leafs in the playoffs have been jobbed in the past isn't paying attention. On the winning goal to eliminate them from the playoffs in Game 7, there were two, not one, there were two penalties that were called during that game, but weren't called in that at the end of the period when the winning goal was scored. So, you can call it homer, you can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to stand behind the fact that if you watch, you'll see that the defenseman was grabbed and hauled to the ice and at the blue line. So, the Leafs need somebody that I don't know. Does it help? I don't know, but they haven't had it before, Aaron. So, Simmons is a good man. The guy's a character dude. He is class A, B, C, D, all the way down the alphabet, but he just can't play the game at the speed and the tenaciousness that it needs to be played in the playoffs.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the Leafs getting jobbed in the playoffs, the last article that I can find that references the Toronto Maple Leafs having a 5-on-3 power play dates back to April 2021. So for anybody else out there saying that the referees are biased in favor of the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's been almost 2 years since we'd had a 5-on-3 power play. So I'm not sure where the perception is that the refereeing is biased in favor of the Leafs, but
Well,
it ain't the truth.
if all you're looking for, Aaron, is an instance when the Leafs get a good call, well, then you're going to think that. But it's the cumulative stuff that I'm referring to. It's the repetitive stuff. Like I said, two penalties that weren't called on the winning goal against Tampa in Game 7. Two penalties that weren't called, and they weren't gray area penalties, because the Leafs had a goal taken back because of interference in that same game earlier when
Yep.
they skated in front of the defenseman, and it wasn't even as obvious as what happened to their defenseman up at the blue line. So the Leafs are going to have to make somehow the other team accountable, and they're going to have an uphill battle in the playoffs. So we'll see how their second part of this season, the second half, how it starts. It's their first game. They're playing back-to-back to a team on the subject of playoffs that ejected them.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't necessarily say ejected, because it was sort of a pre-playoff round, but at the very least, a team that eliminated them from playoff contention, not necessarily eliminated them from the playoffs.
Oh, the way you just put it then means they didn't even make the playoffs, which is true.
Yeah.
Factually, if you really are gonna, they didn't make the playoffs that year.
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you used to the record of futility and not getting past the first round, and in some cases, not even into the first round.
They didn't get in through the preliminary round that goes to the first round.
Do you remember when the league first went to 21 teams and the Leafs somehow managed to find themselves in 17th a few times?
Yeah. Yep. They just made it by a point. In fact, one year, I think if I remember correctly, they finished tied on points, but they lost on wins and losses.
Yep.
Outright wins, because back then, I believe they were still doing wins, losses, and ties.
Yes, there was still 1 point for a tie, 0 points for a loss. There was no keep a point if you managed to tie but then lose in overtime. It was either 2 points, 1 point, or nothing.
Yep.
So
And in that year they tied too many because they didn't win one more that they needed to win, and they lost because the total points were the same, but they had too many ties, not enough wins. Yeah. No. Hey, look, I'm buoyed a little bit by your dedication to the team, but the other part of me is buoyed by the fact that I'm a Toronto guy, and I love Toronto, and I don't know if people understand this. A lot of people who support the Leafs don't necessarily support them; they support the city of Toronto. There are a lot of people who don't like Toronto, the Maple Leafs, less today than 10, 15 years ago. Because they were so awful, people would not want to admit that they were a fan of that team. There was that back then, right? Now you can be a fan of the team, but but they don't win the first round. And that's a lot less people that need to hear that. This team, you know, earns the respect of the fans during the season. The problem with the team is the playoffs. And again, I repeat, power forward, Kyle, power forward, a guy that can, maybe Wilson will spring free from Washington. Can you imagine what he would look like on the left wing and with the Leafs with Marner on one side?
that would be interesting to say the least.
On the right
I
side?
find myself slightly amused by that.
I just think about it. And Matthews in the middle.
Oh, oh,
Can you
don't tease me like
imagine?
that, Frank.
Can you imagine? Matthews, Marner, and Wilson.
Oh, the carnage, man, the carnage.
And the people who hate the Leafs are having a nightmare right now. You're welcome. I'm your nightmare. I'll bring you more later when I come up with a few more. He's Dubas is going to do what he's going to do. Let's go to the news like we do like to do. Canadian Pacific Railway, Aaron, reached a deal with workers. Tell us about it.
So this is a tentative agreement that CP Rail has reached with about 550 administrative support and intermodal employees in Canada. The terms of the agreement with U.S. Steelworkers Local 1976 won't actually be released until the contract has actually been ratified. But this comes on the heels of CP reaching an agreement with Unifor, who represents another 1,200 workers there. Those are the workers that are responsible for maintaining rail cars and locomotives. The ruling on this is expected sometime this quarter. And this is a ruling, by the U.S. Surface Transportation Board, which is reviewing CP's acquisition of Kansas City Southern, which was something that we actually covered last year, if memory serves, where CP was looking to expand to the States because they need an additional north-south rail line. We'll have to see how this turns out. This is something we'll be keeping an eye on for future reference.
The Canadian Justice Minister says he's eyeing bail reform. Aaron, what does that look like? It's scary in the U.S. It's a real it's a real problem in regards to doing it and supporting it and being against it.
Well, this is in regards to individuals who are multiple offenders, who are out on bail and recommit and commit crimes again. There was a letter from Premier saying that there's a growing number of calls for changes to prevent accused people who are out on bail from committing further criminal acts. The Premier's call on the federal government to establish a reverse onus system for specific firearms offenses that would require the person seeking bail to demonstrate why they should not remain behind bars. During a speech to the Canadian Bar Association, Justice Minister David Lametti said the proposed reforms are going to be discussed at a coming meeting with provincial justice ministers, and that he's giving serious consideration to reforming bail laws in response to a request from certain premiers to make changes. The proposal to introduce a reverse onus system for certain firearms officials is getting serious consideration, he says, from the Liberal government. So we'll keep an eye on that story as well.
Anybody in the process of committing a crime and has a gun, they need to be a little extra. You're going to jail and you're staying in jail longer. They're really in the commission of a crime. We cannot have people using weapons, and we must discourage it any way possible. having a gun and using it for illegal purposes. Um, I just don't see, Aaron, why they. I agree with the premier on this one, with the idea that what he's saying is if they use a gun, then we need to consider that, and if they use a gun in commission of a crime, they need to explain why they deserve to be out. You tell us why you deserve to be out.
Yeah.
Conscientiousness is important, and onus on accepting responsibility is something that says, right. It says you're going to have to be responsible now for telling us why you're in jail and why you should be let out. Yeah, that's crazy. Alberta premier says landing missed on limp handshake with prime minister. What?
There was a bit of a viral video going around on some social media sites the other day. Danielle Smith was having a meeting with Trudeau, and they went to shake hands, and they both kind of, well, she missed basically and pulled up short. The reason Danielle says that she missed the handshake is because she'd already shaken hands with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau backstage before they got out in front of the cameras, and didn't think a handshake in front of the cameras was necessary. Now,
I heard Aaron that she said he moved a little too far left.
I'm not meeting you in the middle on this one, Frank.
Okay, you're right.
But yeah, no, it just seemed like she was trying to avoid the handshake in the first place, not realizing, of course, because she's unfamiliar with dealing with the media in a broader sense, apparently, that these sorts of displays for the camera are kind of necessary. So.
Oh well. So somebody, a high-ranking army official from the U.S. called the Chinese ranking official, and apparently nobody picked up.
Yeah, in the first couple of hours after a United States Air Force F-22 downed a Chinese balloon, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reached out to his Chinese counterpart via a special crisis hotline, hoping to have a quick talk with his counterpart in China. Just a quick general-to-general talk to explain things. But Chinese Defense Minister Wei Fengshi declined to get on the line. So the phone just rang and rang and rang. Now,
my people tell me that his excuse was that Chinese food. He was busy.
Yeah, he might have been hungry again.
Now that's way too racist. Go ahead. That's now you're impugning good food. Don't do that. I like Chinese food.
But yeah, as it stands, the hotline was not picked up on the other end, so not 100% sure how to interpret that. But it seemed clear that the Chinese were reluctant to talk about that sort of thing at this point. We'll have to see how it is going forward. Given that a second unidentified flying object was shot down over Alaska, one has a feeling that they might actually be answering the phone slightly more quickly this time around.
So apparently, criticism can ignite hate response. Who's this guy, Joey Swall? He's a fitness influencer. He took someone to task, and that person now is saying that they're getting hate messages, death threats. Good Lord.
So basically, Joey Swall's stated goal is to try to defuse and detoxify gym culture. Calling out people that, behave badly towards others at the gym who may be just getting started. Well, there was a lady who posted a video of an older gentleman who was just wearing street clothes and moving from piece of equipment to piece of equipment in a gym and staring at certain members of the opposite sex. So she posted a video saying that's kind of bad behavior. If you're not working out and you're just sitting there holding your phone in your hand staring at other people. You saw the one that I'm talking about. Well, Joey called her out for calling him out, saying, well, he could be just a senior looking for companionship or people to hang around with. and his followers took it upon themselves to start behaving badly towards this woman. She's deactivated all of her social media because of this attention from Joey. There was actually some of his followers that showed up at a radio station where she recorded a podcast looking to talk with her. So she's deactivated her Twitter, her Instagram, and everything. And Joey, in response to all of this, has basically said, "Hey, I don't ever tell my followers to do that. They're not my followers. You know, even if it says that they follow me on Instagram and Twitter, I never tell them to do anything like that. I don't tell people to call out bad behavior, but that's exactly what he does."
Well, the problem is, well, I'm not going to tell people what the problem is, folks. The simple truth is on the internet, when you criticize somebody, you demonize them. When you demonize someone, once you've demonized them, you've opened the door for actions that aren't directly your fault. But that's why you need to be responsible for what you say on the internet, especially influencers, influential people. It's in the word influence. He doesn't have to tell people to do bad things. He influences them into doing bad things. Maybe he isn't doing it intentionally. Maybe he isn't. He's like the person testifying in court who says, I can't remember. I
Yeah.
don't
Now,
remember.
and the thing is here, you know, his videos do have a large impact in detoxifying gym culture to a certain extent. He also speaks to the fact that, hey, I've seen women who have been harassed and gone over to see if they're okay and offered them memberships in my home gym to work out in a relatively toxic free environment, gym bro toxicity free environment. But at the same time, you know, him calling people out in the way that he does um, seems to give other people carte blanche for what they perceive to be the ability to call people out as well. And it sort of spirals and gets a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit out of control.
absolutely. Unfortunately, people tend to spin their own version of what they see, right? I'll give you an
Mhm.
example. I think you saw this one. I think we talked about it actually. There was one with this tiny young lady, and she was lifting weights. The weights looked almost as big as she was. And she was lifting them. And somebody took a picture of her lifting the weights, and in the background was a guy staring at her. I wouldn't be surprised if it was staring at her because she was lifting some gaudy amount of weights. And the poor guy, I'm not saying he wasn't staring at her in a terrible way, but I am saying you don't know that. And when I looked at the situation, when I saw the picture, I'm going, wow. I found myself staring at the picture, not at her, but at the weights. And then I'm looking at her and then the weights, and I'm going, wow, that's one strong girl. And that's a lot of weight she was lifting. And I suspect it's possible that poor person who can get a lot of aggravation wasn't doing anything intentional. But unfortunately, that's the way the internet works. It's not about truth, it's about perception. And we're living in an era where people really can adjust perception.
This is true, you know, but when an individual is in street clothes in a gym and just idly moves from piece of equipment to piece of equipment and is there for 45 minutes to an hour, you know, it kind of makes you wonder what they're actually there for. That's
I hear you. I'm not like, again, assumption, is something that, anyway, it's not important. What's important is getting healthy, folks, and exercising is really good. And I think we should try to be less judgmental. And there's a lot of ways we can be less judgmental.
yep.
What's the next story, Aaron?
Well, it looks like we're coming out of the first intermission here and swinging into the second period. So,
Uh, so we're talking about Dubas again.
yeah, we're back to Dubas again, but in this particular case here, we're not looking at something short term. We're actually looking at something slightly more long term. Now, Kyle Dubas, as everybody knows at this point, is up for well, his contract is expiring at the end of this season.
Mhm.
You know, the perception here is that, and he's clearly stated that his intention at this point is not to look more forward to anything other than the closing of this season. Now, he's been in the big chair since May of 2018, but is currently without a contract beyond July 1st. Um, at this point here, based on what he's done with the team and the team that he's built, I really do think he actually deserves a renewal. Um, I mean, I'm in the minority when it comes to this sort of thing, obviously, because everybody's like, well, they haven't gone anywhere in the playoffs. Fair. I understand that. As a barometer of success, getting deep into the playoffs would be a good thing for him. But at the same time, worrying about anything past the end of this season is a genuine distraction for him. He needs to focus right now on coming up on the trade deadline in March and getting this team ready for the playoffs. He can't really think about anything past that.
The problem is we're in the 8th year of a 5-year plan, a 5-year Shannon plan.
Well, and that's on Brendan. That's not necessarily on Kyle.
Yeah, the thing is, the bottom line is that this team has been criticized, and I'm one of the people who's criticized this team, not necessarily on talent, but on the mix. I've never had any confidence in Kyle Dubas in creating a mix of players that can win in the playoffs. He's a fantastic. He has a great organization, identifies talent. His teams always have a whole bunch of talent. I mean, and his teams do a great job of with it. And his team is the coach too, right? He counts
Mm-hmm.
as part of his. Those are his people. The players and the coaches are his people, and those two groups create a very good team during the regular season. But every time they roll up to the playoffs, they roll out. Now, having said that, in defense of your opinion, I'm going to say I agree with you in this way. And I've said it before. Careful what you wish for, Leaf fans. Careful what you wish for.
Like, I'll be honest, based on the work that he's done in the past 5 years and getting certain major pieces in place for this team, if the Leafs do free him up and I'm looking for a general manager, I am throwing a fire hose full of money at this kid to try to get him to come with my team. At 37 years old, he's got a long history ahead of him. He's got known connections with different teams and different organizations. He has a great pool to draw from. Um,
And you'll end up outside the Atlantic Division.
where he might actually have a chance to win for a change. Here's the thing.
That's the biggest problem the Leafs have. It isn't the general manager. Like, I don't agree with the reason I can say what I say about Kyle with total certainty is that unfortunately in this division that he's in, he can't afford to make mistakes. Mistakes are, you know what I mean? Like they're so visual because if you're the Florida Panthers and last year you finished atop the Eastern Conference, and this year they're struggling to make the playoffs. And they rejected early in the playoffs last year. Not everybody can win, and there are some real sad stories out there. Do you want to be the Ottawa Senators? Do you want to be the
Columbus Blue
Chicago
Jackets?
Blackhawks? Because Leaf fans, that can happen. Because if nothing else, we've learned that when a new GM comes in, they come in with an idea, a new idea. And you can't add players. You got to subtract them as well as add them. So the makeup of the team can be affected quickly with a change of GMs. And it's not a quick change the Leafs need. They need a tune-up. But you get a new GM, his loyalty to his team is at pretty much zero, if you know what I'm saying. Everybody's on the block.
The other important thing to keep in mind here is the Leafs have the most man games lost to injury this season in the entire NHL.
Speaking of that, Murray.
Muzzin. Well, first off, Muzzin is actually going in for another appointment in the coming weeks to determine his status. So that's part of it. Matthews is practicing in a red non-contact jersey now. He's returning from a knee strain that was suffered January 25th. He said he felt some tightness in the warm-up, and it got worse as the game went on. But add to their woes here, Matt Murray is now on the injured reserve. And he was nursing an ankle problem late last month. and was actually scheduled to start that January 27th game against the Ottawa Senators before being made a late scratch. He
Yeah.
also, as you know, missed time earlier this season with a groin injury. So, I mean, as
There's
it
good
stands,
news. Silver lining. Come on, Aaron. There's a silver lining.
there is always a silver lining here. Now, he's been 11, 5, and
Joseph
2 so far this
Wall.
season. Yeah, Joseph Wall has been playing fantastic for the Toronto Marlies. So he's definitely an option if Shelgren can't go. And Shelgren has played well for the Leafs when
Well,
he's had to
Wall's up.
fill in as a backup.
Wall's up with
So,
the team.
yep, he is as of this afternoon.
Yeah, Wall's
So,
up with the team. So, I'm dying to see how he does against National Hockey League players. And he might get a chance. I mean, they've discovered that maybe they can't lean on Samsonov as much as they have. They're going to have to back off the accelerator a little bit with him because he does tend to, he's just not used to playing that often, Aaron.
oh, it's true. He hasn't exactly shown himself to be the most durable. So work
Well, it's
maintenance,
just experience. He doesn't have,
yeah,
Aaron, he doesn't have the experience of playing that many games. It's something that, it's, building body memory, if you will, physical memory. Your body has to become acclimatized to what you're expecting from it, and game shape's a whole different story than preparing for the game.
this is very true. Mentally preparing
So
for a game is completely different than
I
actually
love the
being able
kid.
to actually sleep with them.
I love Samsonov. I think Joseph Wall's a very intriguing player. Matt Murray, he's been brought to Toronto by a friend, by somebody who respects and loves him, and that's Dubas. And they have a connection going back to junior. And Campbell went to his team and won a championship while Murray sat on the sidelines. Maybe a little payback, or hey, let's try this again. And then it's like Groundhog Day all over again. I mean, we're looking at what happened to him in London, wasn't it? Isn't that where Dubas was in London?
No, he was in
No,
the
Sault
Sioux.
Ste. Marie. Sault
Yeah.
Ste. Marie. Sorry, I'm getting my junior teams mixed up. So in the Sioux, Murray was the goaltender, and then they traded for Campbell and won a championship with Campbell in net. So this is it's Groundhog Day all over again. So if the guy can't play because he's physically not well, then you don't play him. And the
Yeah.
same thing goes with the defenseman Muzzin. If he can't play, and can you imagine he's not going to play in a regular season? Like if he doesn't come back soon, what, you're going to ask him to jump in the playoffs? A guy who has had concussion issues, back issues, knee issues, and now you're going to say, guess what? We're going to play in the toughest time of the year. Oh my goodness, come on. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Not
just
the way
like
to
putting him
go.
in a meat grinder, right? That's just like putting him in a meat grinder. No, have some compassion. And, he's been out long enough that I'm not sure. He doesn't practice with the team. He goes everywhere. He hangs out with the team. Mentally, he's still with the team, but physically, no, not at all.
Yeah. No, and it's obviously it's an ongoing concern. Wall could actually see his first action tonight if they decide that they want to save Samsonov for Hockey Night in Canada. And again, it's
Home
a
game.
back-to-back with travel.
He does play well at home.
This
At
is
least
true.
until
Samsonov does play much better.
the last game. Until the last game. Or last two. Well, it doesn't matter anyway. Let's talk about the Canadian Football League, and let's talk about Antoine Pruneau was drafted, the first draft by the Red Blacks, and he's retired. That's how long it's been. He's been in the league. They won the Grey Cup in their second year. He was on the team. He was a very integral part of that team.
Yeah, and he's played with he's basically had an 8-year CFL career, and football is one of the most physically demanding sports out there, just because of the constant impact. So I can see him wanting to retire at this point. He's the all-time leader for games played with the Red Blacks, 122. Leads them in total tackles with 448. He's got 10 interceptions, 4 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. He left everything that he had on the field. It was always a pleasure to watch him play, but he used to give me fits watching him play against the Argos.
Oh, he was a tough bugger. Tough.
Yeah.
Fantastic defender. Well, the Lions signed the national offensive lineman Suk Chung.
So they've signed him to a 2-year extension. He says, it's been an honor to suit up for the team I grew up watching, especially with the core group of players that are sticking around. Can't wait to tackle unfinished business. It's his eighth season in the CFL. He's already played 7 seasons and 107 games. Uh, he moved to BC as a free agent just ahead of 2019 and made 19 starts over the past 2 seasons with them. So glad to see him. Glad to see him back with them.
While the Argos acquire a hometown player in Jordan Williams, first round draft pick. Well, it's the last first round draft pick, so it's a high second round pick by the
Yeah,
Argos.
it's a good draft pick as any to give away, just because you know that you've won based on that. But he was selected first overall during the 2020 CFL draft. Set a CFL record for defensive tackles by a Canadian rookie with 92 in 14 games, and he got the most outstanding rookie award in 2021. So I'm glad to see him come into Toronto. We'll have to see how he meshes with our line.
He'll be fun. Stamp signed former Ticat receiver Tony Brown, not to be confused with Antonio Brown.
Exactly. Now, Brown attended training camp with the Ticats in 2022 and saw action in 2 preseason games. He made 2 catches for 25 yards. In 2020, he was signed with the Cleveland Browns as an undrafted free agent and also spent time with the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in.
Well, the NBA trade deadline didn't offer any changes with the Raptors. I don't know, Aaron, how do you feel about their lack of making moves?
Well, they had the opportunity to do the most and actually did the least. Um, I mean, as it currently stands, I'm surprised that they weren't more serious at the deadline based on the fact that they're sub 500. Um, I mean, they did bring a player back. They brought back Jacob Pirtle from the San Antonio Spurs in exchange for Kem Birch and a top 6 protected 2024 first round pick. So this is a player that we had and got rid of, and now we're bringing back. So it's one of those. I'm not exactly sure what they're thinking at this point, but he is a 7-footer, so there's something there. I mean, they're hoping that he'll be a rim protector, a rebounder, and a screen setter. So sort of a jack of all trades, master of none.
The Phoenix Suns made a lot of moves trying to create a super team. Let's go over to the National Hockey League and talk about the Rangers trade deadline tracker says they're trying to acquire Tarasenko.
Yeah, they actually got him.
Oh
So
boy.
yeah, so he's now a New York Ranger. They picked him and a defenseman up from the St. Louis Blues. So that's a major piece of weaponry coming back east. That makes things a little bit more difficult in the Eastern Division now. So it's
I don't
something to keep
know.
an eye on for
There's some
sure.
cap issues there. I don't know how they fit him under the cap because I don't think they were a team that had a lot of room under the cap. Well, the Habs Canadian signed defenseman Jordan Harris.
So yeah, it's been a bit of a scanty news week, unfortunately, because most Canadian teams have been off. But Jordan Harris got a 2-year contract extension. The deal is going to run through the 2024-25 campaign and carries an average annual value of $1.4 million. He had 1 goal and 10 assists in 47 games with Montreal so far this year. He also played 4 seasons at Northeastern in the NCAA and was selected 71st overall in the 2018 draft. They think they have a good deal going with him. So they figured the 2-year extension was due.
Yeah, good for them. The
Yeah.
Flames, the Dina return scores go-ahead goal as the Red Wings top the Flames.
So he scored the go-ahead goal at 5:51 of the third period. That gave the Red Wings a 2-1 win over the Flames on Thursday. He hasn't played since November 5th of last year because of a broken right leg. So glad to see that he's fully rehabbed and back in the lineup. Dylan Larkin got the game all tied up at 19:46 of the second period when he scored on the power play. From there, Ville Husso had 35 saves and hasn't lost a game against the Calgary Flames so far in his career. So there's an interesting little stat line for you.
Flames defenseman Anderson hurt after being struck by a vehicle while riding a scooter.
Yes, Rasmus Anderson was actually sent to the hospital on Wednesday night. He was riding a scooter in Detroit. The incident happened at around 6 when Anderson was actually riding a scooter out to dinner. He was released from hospital late on Wednesday night after undergoing a battery of tests. He was going through a crosswalk at the time, says Brad Treliving, the Flames GM. The good news is that Raz is doing well. He was transported by ambulance to Detroit Receiving Hospital. He's currently listed as day-to-day.
Well, hopefully he recovers completely. Let's talk about the Oilers and the other Van Riemsdyk, the better Van Riemsdyk, and Hart lead the Flyers to shootout win over the Oilers.
Yeah, so James Van Riemsdyk, former Maple Leafs legend, JVR, and Morgan Frost scored in the shootout, and Carter Hart made 34 saves as the Flyers dropped Edmonton 2-1. Kevin Hayes scored in regulation, and it was the Flyers' second win in 11 tries in games that went to overtime. They haven't had a lot of success, but it's good to see them win. Evander Kane scored, and Connor McDavid assisted. Now, this is actually only the second game that the Oilers have lost in the past 10, and they've earned a point in every single game that they've played in the past 10 so far. So that's good. The fact that they lost in a shootout to Philly is not good, but, that's neither here nor there at this point.
I'd love to see a final between Winnipeg and Edmonton in the Western Conference.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. The only thing better would be Toronto, Montreal. Oh, wait, there's not much chance of that. Forget it.
we can always hope.
Okay, let's go over to the Vancouver Canucks, and they're playing the team that they made a big trade with. And guess what they gone and did?
Well, they done one is what happened. Elias Pettersson got 2 goals in the third period, and the Canucks managed to stop a 2-game skid by beating the Islanders 6-5 on Thursday. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Brock Besser, Nils Amon, and Anthony Beauvillier, one of the pieces that came back in exchange for Bo Horvat, scored for the Canucks. Colin Delia made 24 saves in the third game of a 4-game trip to begin the second half of the season. JT Miller and Quinn Hughes both had 2 assists. Bo Horvat, Kyle Palmieri, Brock Nelson, Matthew Barzal, and Noah Dobson scored for the Islanders, and Ilya Sorokin finished with 28 saves as the Islanders' 4-game winning streak got cut short.
In Vancouver.
No
less. Okay, Aaron, we got a couple of minutes left. What do you want to talk about?
I'm not sure. What do you want to hit me with, Frank?
Well, we made the joke about the Alberta Premier missed the Prime Minister's hand in the handshake because he was a little too far to the left, or she could have been to the right. I guess, the Beyonce broke a record, and I'm not trying to throw shade on her accomplishment. She's won more awards than anybody in the Grammys history. But to put it into context, there have been a lot of Grammys added in the past 20, 25 years.
No, that's a fair assessment.
So, it's like, I don't know. It's I guess what I'm saying is that there's a lot, especially in a week where we lost Christine McVie. Fleetwood Mac dominated when they were in their prime. The Grammys and record sales and all that kind of stuff. I hope people think of that in context, because it's like people trying to compare generations of athletes, because that's what we do too, right? The thing is, with athletes, things change too. They get bigger and stronger and yada, yada, yada. But they're still playing 60-minute games. They're not playing 110-minute games. If you understand what I'm saying, the volume, the opportunity, the percentage, it's almost like, you want to talk about Beyonce and people who win a lot of awards today. The percentage of awards that they were up for and how many they won. Back in the day, people were up for 2 or 3 awards, and we've seen very great talents win all 3 awards or both awards that they were up for. So maybe it's the Canadian me trying to defend Shania Twain. Is that what it is? Maybe it's
I
me.
mean, if you're trying to say that, like certain sports leagues, the Grammys may have expanded and diluted the talent pool, making it easier for individuals to win trophies, I could potentially see that. But at the same time, you do have to consider that the talent pool was also smaller in earlier Grammys shows. There were less prominent musical acts in, say, the 70s or the 80s, as opposed to the expansion that we saw in the 2000s and early 2010s. So, I mean, you
Let me
may be
see if I
correct in
can
your
let,
assessment,
let,
but
let me see if I can help us to agree 100%. I'm going to go for it here. We're going
okay.
to agree 100%. At this time, in this musical world that we live in today, Beyonce draws a lot of attention and has her talent is undisputable, and to that extent, she is a big star, just like every other star in every other era that dominated their time. She dominates this time, but she has a partner, another lady that kind of does the same kind of thing.
Well, we'll at least agree on the fact that she is one of the most dominant
She's
female
dominant.
artists of her time.
She's dominant. There's no, there's no, to me it's gilding the lily. All these awards are just gilding the lily, in my opinion. I guess that's ultimately what I'm saying. Anyway, Aaron, this was fun. Thanks for doing
Thanks a
this.
lot. Appreciate that,
My
Frank.
pleasure. My pleasure. He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live Leaf Talk, seen live on Fridays. We also have our Candid Frank Live show Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Of course, this show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Leaf Talk, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. And if you want to watch the rest of the shows we do here, like Leaf Talk and Candid Frank Live and CFL Talk and football talk and NLL lacrosse talk, you can check us out on YouTube as well under Candid Frank Stanisci. Thanks.